Recording, and can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you, Dr. Hema Prabha, for joining us. I'm Karthik. And Dr. Shanta is here as well. We are part of SIGANA, organizing the Ask a CGen webinar for CG students. So Ask a CGen is a mentoring program that SIGANA organizes for CG students, and the webinars are part of the series. As a host, I welcome Dr. Hema Prabha, who is a CG alum from 2013 Material Sciences. And she has had an illustrious career going places, Tsinghua University, IIT Madras, and now Technion, IISc, Technion now. And she has a very interesting topic here. How do you become a research scientist from being an engineer? So before we begin the webinar, a few logistics. Please mute your audio and video so that the host can really post the questions in the chat. The webinar, if we have a large number of participants, then we will stream it on YouTube. The webinar will be recorded as well as shared. You should be able to do that. We'll pass on to Dr. Hema Prabha. I will stop sharing my screen. Dr. Hema, please take it off.
Thank you. Thank you, Karthik, and thank you, Shanta ma'am, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak with fellow CGians and other people who want to switch their career from engineer to a research scientist. So in my abstract, I have given a general one. For example, I come from a field, material science and engineering, and already it's not just a engineering background only. The word science is there itself. So when it comes to coming from a material science to becoming a research scientist, it was not a transformation for me from engineering to scientist. But I speak with a lot of public people also when I go for science communication or anything. Then I understand there is clearly a difference between engineer to scientist. And when I see this, I wanted to stress upon what really makes a scientist. For example, we always read something, so the concept directly, like whatever the proven concepts, we read it directly and then we apply it to any possible field we want to. For example, even electronics, we take the models and then we apply it and then we fabricate the device or something. So really getting a hypothesis, really thinking whether it will happen or not, whether my hypothesis is correct or not, whether testing it. So that's where the science part comes in. So throughout this talk, I'll be speaking about that and also about nanoscience and my research projects in IISc, from my intern projects, from CEG, and also from my postdoctoral projects. So I'm not able to, yeah. So I come from a village named Katuputur. It's in Trichy district. I did my schooling till my 5th standard there. Then my mother thought I should move to a good school or something. So then I went to Mohanur, which is about 1 hour travel by bus from my home. So 1 hour and 2 hours will just go in traveling. So I did my schooling till my 10th standard there. Then after that, I went to Paramati Velu, where I did my +1 and +2. So the schooling were mostly in the village background. So though I did my schooling in a matriculation board or anything, my exposure was limited just because of the surroundings there. But I will also explain like why I chose this material science department, and what are the things I picked up in my childhood which helps me to be in a research field now. So most of the time people, one second. Yeah. So most of the time people think when I become a scientist, and when I want to speak in public also, then people ask like, when did you thought that you should be in research? Frankly speaking, I did not know there is a career called being a scientist and being a researcher, because when I was a child, the only career I was exposed to was doctor and engineer. And clearly I did not like to be in biology field or doctor field, because I was not able to remember a lot of all those scientific names which comes along with the field biology. So I was left only with the choice of becoming an engineer. And when I did my schooling, the only engineer I knew was a civil engineer and a little bit of electronics engineer. So even I did not know what I should do or what I should become. So I still remember when I was asked this question in my I think my 10th standard teacher asked me what I wanted to become, and it was a general question. They were expecting the answer of doctor, because I was in the school top 10 or something, but clearly I did not know what I wanted to become that day. But even still, I think I'm exploring what I want to do in the future. But clearly I did not know any career, because I was limited with the option of choosing the career. So then how did I choose material science, or how did I choose my further career? So I told like I come from a village named Katuputur, and there was a very small, very small library actually. It was just a room, and maybe I think the maximum number of books there were only 500, and the children's books were only around 100 to 200. And luckily, we lived in a house, and under that house we had a shop. Not we, like my neighbors had a shop where people used to sell their old books, old newspapers, and then it will be taken to a shop. So we were friends with the, because of course we were neighbors, and since I was also curious to read anything I got, I could go to them, and whatever newspapers, whatever old books they had, I can take it without paying any money. So I just go there, take as many books as much as I want, and I started reading it. So I must say that I did not get exposed to reading habit directly, but I think I was curious to know about lot of facts. Nowadays, only reading books is not a medium. We know a lot of YouTubes have a lot of good contents. Probably just picking up and knowing things on a regular basis was my thing that time. And only option I had was going over a lot of different books like that. So when I was around 10 standard or so, I think it was in the 2010s, a lot of people were speaking about energy demand, renewable energy, solar energy, and nuclear energy. So everywhere, if you see the newspapers, everywhere, if you see the books, lot of things were going on around renewable energy. So I thought I should choose a career where I will, solve the crisis of the energy demand, as if like one person can solve. That was the exposure I had, and I thought like that. Then when I was in my 12th standard, we, of course, my teachers were not exposed to a lot of other environments. As I said, they were only knowing about engineering and doctor, and even in engineer also, like very few disciplines people know. So when I was in my 12th standard, in my school, they brought a career consultant named Jayaprakash Gandhi, and he came and he spoke about a lot of engineering options there. And he said that if you choose material science, it's not about just reading about only one field. You can read about many things. He said like you can go from being in aerospace, you can go from being in energy, you can even choose a career in biotechnology in future. So he said, if you start your career with material science, then in your further career, you can choose whatever fields you want. That was the only thing I knew. And since he also pronounced this word energy, I thought, okay, then maybe I should choose material science in CEG. And once I got my +2 results, I just checked. I had good scores, obviously, and I just checked, okay, my CGPA is good enough to go to material science, and I was okay with it. And I had another option, like doing energy and environmental science in uh, you might know this Agri University in Coimbatore. Even they have a good program called Energy and Environment. So when I spoke about this with my fellow people, they said if you go to Chennai, you will get more exposure than going to Coimbatore. Then I thought, okay, I had two options. Then one was Coimbatore, and they said better to go to Chennai. So then I just thought, okay, I should choose material science. And also my close friend from school, she also got good score, and we both thought, okay, we both had similar GPA, and we thought, okay, we both are getting in material science, okay, let's just choose. Only that was the exposure I had when I chose this material science department. And when I entered into material science, of course, like in our when you enter into engineering, the first year is getting to know the normal like general mathematics, general physics, general chemistry. All the subjects were general to all the departments. We actually enter into material science only during the second year of our engineering program. So when I entered into material science, I really enjoyed the first year of engineering, because since school, I was so good at mathematics, and even when I came here, I got good professors from in mathematics. So I thought, okay, I really like engineering, and I thought, okay, when I go to even my material science program, I'll be so interested in studying that. But when I entered there, it was not at all about what I thought, because I wanted something in terms of solving problems, solving equations, solving the theorems, like that. But material science was full of theory. I needed to know about material properties. Then suddenly, okay, I need to take a book and then read about the materials properties. And if I need to know about the manufacturing technology under which different materials should be processed, then again I need to go into theory. So I must say that the subject was not what I expected. It was nowhere near to my expectations. And uh, then maybe people can ask, then how did you get gold medal? Of course, we know getting marks and really liking the subject is far different in our education system. So it was not a problem. But as I said, I was so interested in being into energy. And I already said that anyhow, I was not so much liking the curriculum which I had in CEG of material science. So then we had a symposium, or from the AC Tech, they have a nanoscience and technology, nanotechnology, and they conducted a symposium under the material science department. So once we just went there, and I just went with my friends. We just was curious to know what is nanoscience, what is nanotechnology, because that was the time when people were speaking high about this field. So I just was curious to know about that. So we even presented a paper, but it was not about any of our results. We just presented an overview of what is nanoscience. But we came to know a lot of people in CEG who works on nanotechnology. And we also came to know about a center called Center for International Affairs. And we came to know about a professor who works on solar cells from the Crystal Growth Center. If you know about material science department in CEG, we are closely even related with as I said, AC Tech, nanoscience technology, and also Crystal Growth, because more or less the research projects will have a common ground there. So all these were slightly connected. So once I thought, okay, maybe I should go and meet this professor and ask about the possibility of working on solar cells. So then he said, okay, you are from bachelor's. Maybe directly, instead of working with me now, there are some intern programs under which you can go and work in different fields what you want. And I suddenly said, sir, I wanted to work on solar cells. So can you give me a career path there? So he helped me. He just guided us, because before that we did not know what is being an intern also. And it was just in the second year starting, because when we had to apply for this internship, the second year was just starting, like we were in the third semester end or something. So we did not even know about intern, but he said, okay, you can use this, and if you write about your research interest as a, what I want to do if I get an intern, then they will choose a professor accordingly, like that. So then me and bunch of my friends, we wrote like that, and thankfully I got selected also. Then I had to work under a Professor Chu in National Tsinghua University in Taiwan, and I worked on cadmium sulfide solar cells. So the project was like this. We know solar cells, we see everywhere, we know this blue color solar cell everywhere. Uh, but actually those were silicon solar cells, and those are not thin films, those are not nano films. They are made from a silicon wafer, so they are pretty thick. But the project was having a thin film, like suppose if you see the scale bar, this is 1 micron, but the coating what we will have is in few nanometers, the cadmium sulfide. And I, without even knowing that I am entering into the nano field, I was there because if later I understood that whatever research is going on in material science is one or the other way related to the nanotechnology actually. So then I had to coat cadmium sulfide layers over a conducting glass slide. That was the only project I had, and that was interesting at that time. And now I realize that cadmium is a highly toxic material and it is prohibited in most of the countries. Even now, cadmium sulfide solar cells is not really in use. But the projects are exciting. But the thing is that I was not uh, good enough to understand the depth of the field because I was just starting my curriculum in material science. I did not know the different things. It was like just exposing to something bigger before even you realize that it is bigger, right? So something like that it was. And we from India and I'm from CG, and I just thought, okay, these I saw big labs and big universities, big professors, big instruments. Then I thought, okay, this is an abroad, and that's why we have this. Maybe in India we will not have this. So I just thought it like a fancy one. I must say that I did not utilize my second year intern fully because I did not know the true value. Then actually, you'll not believe, like though I was interested in energy and stuff, then I thought I saw all my friends, they were preparing for CAT exam, and they were saying how cool the becoming a management person is, and they said it's good money if you just crack the CAT exam, and if you finish it, it's good money. I just went with, I was thinking, okay, maybe that is something I should think about. Even I must say that I participated in Kurukshetra, the pitch talk programs will be there. Like suppose if we want to start a business, what we have to do, even those kind of pitch talks were there in Kurukshetra event of CEG. I participated there with my friends just out of curiosity and not even knowing that what I want to do in future or whether I'll be able to do that. I did not know that, just in the flow I went there. Even I'm not sure how many of you know there is a Madras School of Economics just behind the Anna Centenary Library. I mean, just behind the Anna University, we have there is a good school of economics. Even I think it is in the top 5 in the in India. So even I went there and then I asked about their economics program, how economics and management are related. I was just exploring, I must say actually. So I was just exploring during the third year semester times. I was just exploring there. But then I applied for a intern. It's an IIT Madras. They offer a special intern program, and I applied there. And that time I got into another energy program. So renewable energy is not, does not only stop with solar energy. It has like even wind energy is there, like fuel cells is there. Even nuclear energy is considered as a green energy, and solid oxide fuel cells are there. So lot of different things are there. And since I thought, okay, I had a solar cell program I already got, I thought, okay, I'll enter into something called fuel cells. And I got, when I applied to IIT Madras and I got the intern, and the good thing is like we can stay even in the CG hostels during the summer holidays, and then we can directly go to IIT Madras. Since that flexibility was there, I chose to be in IIT Madras. And also we had to do one industrial intern program. It was a must when I did my bachelor's. So during third year, I did not prefer to go outside as I had to complete an industrial program. And along with doing the intern program, I also attended a industry, Kone Elevator Industry I attended as a intern student also, like a partial time, I must say, because 60 days was the intern period for IIT Madras, and in between and the holidays I used to go for industrial program. But I must say that when I went to IIT Madras, before even going there, I met the professor, Professor Pratap Haridas. He was so nice. He did not consider like talking to some person not from just under him. He did not consider like a foreigner. He did not consider me like a stranger. Actually, he spoke to me like, okay, what do you want to do, and what are my expertise, and what am I looking for. So he spoke in a very nice way, and I was really excited to work with him. And when I went there, not only the professor was good, even all his PhD students under whom we actually do our intern program, they were so helpful. They actually guided me. They showed me first the facilities in their lab, which itself was exciting for me, because before that I did not know that even in India we have such things. Because we see movies from, we see English movies and we think, okay, only in abroad they have all these things and nothing goes on in India. That's the feel we usually have initially. Then once I thought, okay, here we have, and they only spoke about Indian Institute of Science. So I got interested, and the kind of project I did there was also good. Like we, in their lab, they can fabricate carbon nanotubes. So if you look at the scale, this much is 100 nanometer. And my project looked very simple when I entered there. For example, like we have carbon nanotubes, and you can see these are all tangled, like how hair is tangled, all the carbon nanotubes were tangled. So my project was to untangle this. There are several methods to do this, but I had to come up with my own ways of doing it. And I worked with uh, a PhD student, and of course she used to guide me. And the ultimate aim of this untangling was, suppose like if I have a carbon nanotube, and of course its edge will be free. So we had to attach the drug molecule to it. So once this is done, then they will take it to a medical center, and then they will check whether the attached drug is good for different drug purpose. I mean, this carbon nanotube will act as a drug delivery agent. So this was hearing the overall view was very interesting. And I thought, okay, now I have a tangled carbon nanotube. And I thought, okay, I can suddenly make it into untangling. Just, I was thinking like, if we have hair, how we used to untangle. Like if we have knots of thread, we think, okay, I just need to sit and untangle it. That was just, I was just having that in mind. But we should know that these are in nanoscale, and just we cannot just use our hands or do untangling anything. So then they gave me books to understand what is surface chemistry, how that can be used in exploiting what we want, how different properties can be used in exploiting things which we cannot even see directly. So it was interesting. Then my colloquium there was also good. We even got a project paper there that went fine, and they guided me to choose Indian Institute of Science, doing PhD there, or choosing a research career there. Because after the 2 months, they saw that I was so into performing experiments, and they also told me about the future opportunities I'll be getting if I finish a PhD, which was so interesting. Then I applied for IISc, and that time we had there will be a common IISc entrance test, and once I finish it, then I have to go to IISc Bangalore, and then I should give an interview. And once we give the interview, they will send us the call letter also. So when I applied to IISc, there were 3 options. Like we can choose 3 departments. So first I chose there was Energy Center. Since I was also interested, then I thought, okay, I'll apply to Energy Center. Then of course Material Science and Engineering, and then the Nanoscience. So first department I went to give the interview was Energy, and the interview went for about 40 to 45 minutes, I must say. And there they displayed what are the types of projects we'll be doing on once we enter into PhD. So there they wrote printable solar cells. Just hearing that was so inspiring, because before that I did not even hear anything about printable solar cells. For example, like now we have like we have a silicon, we have a ink, and if you just design, suppose like if I want to take a printout of this, you just need to see whether your printer has the ink, and if you give print, it will just automatically print it. So what the computer identifies is, okay, it identifies each pixel and then it just prints whatever we are given. Similarly, suppose if I have a silicon ink, and then if I can print it, then we can get the printable solar cells. So the project seemed really interesting, and it was completely new, and the interview also went well. And so I was, since I got the acceptance, I thought, okay, I will join there. But then when I entered into IISc, the first year, like since I joined immediately after my bachelor's, it was a direct PhD program, and I had to do a lot of courses compared to people who join after master's. So I had to do a lot of courses, and the first semester kind of went into the courses. But actually, after the second semester, I got into research, and during the second year, completely I was doing the experiments. But then I realized it was not at all what I thought, because when I did my intern program in IIT Madras, there were people to guide me what I have to do. For example, like if I enter into the lab, the mentor will tell me, okay, now we need to perform this set of experiments, and I just do it. And I was curious to do it, and I was even curious to see what are the results I was getting. But when I had to do my PhD, it was not as straightforward. Nobody told me what I should. No, nobody told me what I should do. I mean, I need to find out the research problem myself. And then I need to set up my own experiments, and then see what are the things I have to get. But it was not really easy for me, because I realized that whatever I have studied I was not trained in that way. Because if I have to get a printable solar cell, we can think, okay, first I want ink, then I just need to give print, then it will give me the printable solar cell. But it was not the case. For example, if I need to get a ink, the ink should not settle. Like suppose if I make silicon particles and make it as a solution, the silicon particle should not settle, right? Otherwise, then it cannot print. And if you print it, what is the surety that it is a solar cell? I mean, whether it forms a thin film, and whether it understands, whether it is under the criteria which meets, because if we need to get a solar cell, we need to have a minimum of P and N junction, which comes under the semiconductor physics. So whether whatever I have printed, whether it is following the physics which it should follow to become a solar cell. I just thought, okay, whatever I have studied were just definitions. I did not know what I was actually doing and what I should do. So it was really difficult for me during the first and second year. But then I must say, like, I went in an indirect way of understanding it without even realizing that I was doing it. So I was performing the experiments, but then during my first and second year, as I said initially, like I had a habit of reading books. I must say that only during the CEG 4 years, I don't know where that stopped. I think it should be because after +1 and +2, we were so only into the academic books. We will forget about any other things, because that's how we were said, okay, unless you study, you will not, your future will not be good. So I must say that in my +1 and +2, I stopped reading any books apart from my academics. And I must say that it continued till my CG times also, because I did not overcome that. But during my last year of CEG times, I started slowly reading other books also, because we also had a good Anna Centenary library that time. We used to get a lot of books that time. So only during my last year of CEG, I started again, resuming my reading habit. But when I entered IISc, then I got my scholarship also. So I had enough money to just choose whatever books I wanted. And in Bangalore, there were a lot of bookshops who sells English books and variety of books than what I was seeing in my native place also. So I said that I was struggling during my first year and second year. but during that time, I was also reading this kind of books. First, I think I just saw this book, Biography of Pi. I think I just saw when I was browsing Amazon. I think I just saw this book, and it was interesting because before reading this book, whatever I know about pi was 22 by 7 or 3.14, and I just use it to solve the uh, you know if we want to solve the area of the circle and circumference of the circle, only where the pi comes, and in few circumstances the pi come, and I just use the value 22 by 7, and I did not think anything beyond that. But when I read this book, I came to know that just to know the value of one number, how so many scientists, so many mathematicians from different field, how much they struggle just to get the value of one number, uh, which which was so fascinating for me, because before that I was not taught like that. And this book, Uncle Tungsten, I think I will suggest to any of the material science students or anybody closely related to material science. I think they should have a read through this book. Here, the little boy, he will explore, he will work with his uncle who is good at material science. Of course, during this time there was no field called material science, but he was good at chemistry and he was good at periodic table. And in this book, he will speak about how tungsten is the highest melting point element we know, and so many stuffs he just used to say. And even on the course, they even speak about different scientists like Henry Becquerel, how he was so into flute. So I just came to know about how a scientist struggles to get the values and get the results they want, which I did not read these books, I did not choose these books just for this purpose. But all these books, they just taught me uh, that, for example, just the number pi is not only used in mathematics, and tungsten is not only belonging to material science or chemistry. And this book, Symmetry, why we have symmetry in many things, like why we have right and left hand, why we have it in the similar same way. And similarly, the symmetry directly applies to geometry. And in Bill Bryson book, it starts from Big Bang theory to quantum theory, so it spans everything. So I just got an idea. Science is not about one field like how we study in school. For example, like in physics, we study force. In chemistry, we study molecules. But uh, if you just look back and see, even molecules have forces in between. They have intermolecular forces and intramolecular force. And if you need to know what is force, then you need to have some mathematical idea to get the equation. For example, like if I was given a problem to solve the force between two molecules, then I should be also good at knowing the physics and also the materials chemistry. So I just was, by just reading these books, I was connecting the dots, and it was indirectly helping me to enter into the research field. Uh, I must say that I should have done these things before entering into IIC or before entering into research, but I did not have that idea itself actually. So apart from that, during my first year and second year, I got to know about Isaac Asimov books, which were being translated by one of the IIT Madras professor, and he somehow, like, we got the contact, and I was translating some of the Isaac Asimov books into Tamil, and I just put one here, but I was also translating superconductivity, books about superconductivity. I was also translating books about solar energy. So whatever I had to know before, I was just understanding only during the first 2 years, I must say, and it helped me how I should design the experiment, because energy, we can just, if we just sit back and know energy is solar, okay, then I should know what is the wavelength the solar rays come in, then whether my materials absorb or not, what kind of materials I should choose. So it just goes in a circle, and I must say that these kind of things help me into understanding the dots. And nowadays, not only books are there, there are so many good YouTube channels, documentaries, everything. So I think if you just know an overall picture, it will just it will help you in evolving into a scientist. So I think this habit one must develop, because knowing lot of things and then knowing how to connect them will make you into a good scientist actually. So this is one of the cases. okay, since I spoke about few projects outside, I just want to give this as an example here to understand what I really mean. For example, I said I wanted to work on, my project was printable silicon solar cells, and I wanted silicon nanoparticles. So if you look at the properties of silicon, silicon can easily become oxide. But once it becomes oxide, instead of being a semiconductor, it will become an insulator. So we need to avoid the oxide formation. And one thing was, instead of doing at room temperature, we can actually do at very low temperatures. The room temperature is 30 degree, which is 298 Kelvin. And we were performing these experiments near to 100 Kelvin. I think around 130 Kelvin less than the room temperature. That was the temperature we were designing to perform the experiment. So we used, instead of using normal nitrogen gas, we used liquefied nitrogen gas, and the temperature for liquid nitrogen was 77 Kelvin. So it was able to sustain our temperature around 100 Kelvin, which we wanted. But then, for example, if you have here, this is the schematic of it. I have a ball here and I have a cup here. So if I put bigger pieces of silicon at that temperature, under this pressure, like we give a pressure here so that the ball will move up and down, we will get the bigger silicon particles crushed into nanoparticles. But then the question was, okay, we were putting the bigger silicon particles here, and once we give the pressure, we were getting the silicon nanoparticles. That much we were sure. But this is just like, this is not good enough for a scientist, because suppose I say, in my lab scale, I have a very small cup like this, and in this I pour liquid nitrogen, and then I get silicon nanoparticles. But suppose I want to transfer this into a technology, and if I want to sell it, we have to answer a lot of parameters. For example, I need to say exactly how much energy is being given to the ball, given from the ball to the powder, so that it is getting crushed, or how much temperature I need to really maintain, because we arbitrarily choose 100 Kelvin, but maintaining 100 Kelvin is a huge consumption of energy in an industrial scale. But if we need tons and tons of nanoparticles, and if we need to maintain at 100 Kelvin, it's not easy to maintain that much low temperature. Then we need to supply lots of liquid nitrogen. Then again, it is huge consumption. So we have to give them the lot of parameters. And first thing is, which temperature to maintain. At least we can do it indirect way. Like we can perform different experiments, like one at 100, one at 150 Kelvin, one at 200, one at room temperature, so that then we can compare the results and then we can give. But actually understanding how much energy the ball was giving to the powder so that it is getting crushed, which was not direct to measure. Because if you see this, all these setups were made indigenously. These were not bought from anybody. With these designs were made by us, and then me and my professor, we made this design, and then we went to the mechanical shops, and they have to fabricate for us. None of this were got from outside. So in this case, we need to also give these parameters to outside. The question was, if you see this, if I see how much the ball is moving, then I can calculate it easily, because I can know the weight of the ball and the height of the ball. From there, I can easily calculate it. But we were performing this experiment under a closed atmosphere, because then only we can maintain the temperature. And looking at it was very difficult. And also the ball was moving faster than our eye can sense. Or when I checked using my mobile, even my mobile was not good enough to first see how much it was. Then I must say that I saw my friends from other departments, especially aerospace departments and mechanical departments. They were using high-speed camera, and they were able to capture like per second, they were able to capture 1,000 frames. They were able to capture even 10,000 frames. The typical number of frames per second is in a TV is 25 frames per second. In our mobile is also around 25 to 100, not more than that. I think even 100 is possible only in iPhones, not in a regular phone. So this was the case when I have. But what I wanted was much, much higher than that. I wanted 1,000 frames than that. Then only I will be able to smoothly measure how much how the ball is moving. So then, as I said, science is not just about seeing in a narrow way. You need to know a lot of things. So when I was just having a look at my friends who are working in other departments, I saw they were using the high-speed camera and they were able to capture high frames of about 10,000 also. And for me, 1,000 was enough. So I got a camera and I made a setup like that. And I was able to measure how much the ball is moving and I know which time it is. Then it was easy for me to calculate everything. And now I gave the parameters to them and it is now being used in several things, because once we get this basic phenomena, then people put lot of different materials. I just put silicon. Now people put all different materials, all different alloys, and this single phenomena which I gave is helpful in determining many other things. So this is one such thing. And once, as I said, like if I learn something, uh, suppose there is a saying like, how do you know if you understand the concept well? If you can easily explain to others, only then you know that you really understood the concept. If you cannot explain it easily, which means that you really did not understand it. So suppose like if I say something like, okay, high speed camera, if I read about, then I start to write a short write up in a magazine, in a science magazine. So then I get an overall picture of it. So I also wrote about high speed cameras immediately once I got this results. So similar to that, I will just give you another example. Okay, so this is just to show that, okay, I was telling that I got nanoparticles, but how do I know I really got nanoparticles unless I see them? So then there is a different field. Now it has become a big field also, like electron microscopy, and using which we can image particles of very few nanometers. And all these images were taken by me, and you can see that here are a bunch of particles. And when I take a close look at it, the particles were less than 20 nanometer, because this is 20 nanometer, and you see all the particles were less than that. And if I see it, I have particles of about 2 nanometers, and I can even see how the atoms are arranged at this scale actually. So even like when I entered into IIC, I was just seeing the bigger picture. But then once I entered into it, I came to know that understanding the science behind it is more important than looking at a big picture, just looking at the big picture. I will not say than, I will just say that. So I had this kind of particles, and I was just checking at some optical properties, and we can see there is a phenomena called photoluminescence. Suppose you send a light through one material, it will take up that energy and then it will emit in a different way. For example, like here you have a solution and they pass light from one direction, and this uh, and these particles will emit at different uh, wavelength based on the size. For example, like we have particles of 2.6 nanometer, 2.9 nanometer to 4 nanometer, and each emits light at different wavelength. So you have green, you have a spectrum from green to red. You can have different colors just by tuning the size. So since I had nanoparticles, I thought, okay, let me also check the photoluminescence. And surprisingly, instead of coming in the visible wavelength, which is 400 to 800 nanometer, I got in the range of UV, which was surprising. And then we got to understand the physics behind it once we got the properties. So nanotechnology does not stop with one thing. For example, like it goes into solar cells, and without even my knowledge, it went into UV LEDs. So if we understand one concept, then it can be branched into whatever applications we want. So in IIC also, I got to work with other projects called thermoelectrics, where a material will convert heat into electricity. Even this is one of the important material science problem now, because since this concept is well known, I think even in our school we studied about converting heat into electricity. We know the Seebeck effect, we know the inverse Seebeck effect also, Peltier cooling, but the actual material which can convert heat into electricity is still not up to the mark so that it can come into commercial use. That is why most of the cases, the heat energy just goes as waste. So I came to know about this, and this was also interesting. So if you look at it, all my PhD time work were mostly into semiconductors and mostly related to energy, and it was good. But then uh, I came to know that I was so naive that I will just look at a big picture called energy and I will just work on it. Because before that, I just read newspapers, I just read books, and I thought, okay, if I work on renewable energy, then I'll be able to solve the crisis of renewable energy. Then I clearly understood it was not the case. Doing research is like you have this many things, and whatever research we do is just adding a notch to it. So I understood that going by the just the big name of application, it will not do anything good. I see many people just by seeing the big picture, they just go. For example, like I have people, even CG mechanical engineers also, I think. So my friends, they go and study the dynamics of uh, how the fluids move in a body. So if something called neuro comes, then their name is high. But if they study about the fluid dynamics in eyeball or something, then they think their level is low. But it was actually not the case. Whether you study about dynamics in neuro, whether you study about the dynamics in eyeballs, it's about like everything is useful. So then I understood that just seeing the big picture, seeing the names of big applications is not a good thing. Then I went into IIS. From IISc, I came here to Technion and I am doing my postdoc here. And here I am working on piezoelectrics and ferroelectrics, which is slightly different from what I was doing in my PhD program. And as I said, I was also into electron microscopy, where I can see about fine nanometer scale particles and atoms. And here I can, so piezoelectric and ferroelectric is like converting the mechanical energy into electrical energy and vice versa. And here mostly I involve in microscopy, where I map individual atoms and then study how the material is. For example, this is a barium titanate crystal, and the yellow ones are barium atoms, and the blue ones circled titanium. And you can see the shift between barium and titanium. If it is just 20 picometers, which is very low, just because of this shift, we get all the big properties which we are getting like this. All this big phenomena happens just because of this 20 picometer shift in the atom position. So this is really interesting to understand. And apart from that, I also study about materials for different applications. So this classic example I give for public if I want to speak about my project. So we know this phone chargers and everything. We know those are flexible, but those are made of plastics mostly. Like most are polymers. But we have this kind of porcelain teacups. Mostly they are ceramics, and once you drop it, it will break. So getting a flexible ceramic was unknown so far. And in our lab, we got a material for the first time, which is super elastic, where you can see this is ceramic material. It is in a folded state, but when I give electric field, you can see it is just opening like a flexible material. And once I again take out the electric field, you can see that it is still flexible and it goes back to its initial state. So we got a flexible ceramic material, which is something similar to a polymer, which was unknown before this actually. And this has a lot of interesting applications. And we also understood why this material behaves like suddenly why a ceramic behaves like a flexible material. We also understand the physics behind it. So the project here is more of understanding the physics behind the piezoelectric and the ferroelectric material, mainly using the electron microscopy. So all this were really, the research work is really interesting and it's going on. But then, since I said I speak about nanoscience and how to choose a career here, I must say that now nanoscience is not limited to material science or any field. It's I see electronics people choosing nanoscience because nowadays most of the things need nanoelectronics. So people do their bachelor's in electronics and then they choose nanotechnology, or directly they do their project into nanoelectronics. And I also see biotechnology people using nanobotics. And you must understand that even in today's coronavirus vaccination preparation also, the nanotechnology used to create virus-like particles so that they can generate vaccination. And there are a lot of advantages over it. And it's there in nanochemistry, it's in aerospace industry. So the nanoscience is everywhere. So I cannot actually put a limit to this field. Even I see mathematicians solving different equations for just for the nano regime, because for the classical regime, whatever mathematics is there might not directly apply. So whatever field you are, you can directly choose nanoscience in the career, and there are a lot of opportunities also. But then, okay, once you enter into research position, if you want to be a researcher, of course, you start with a PhD or some relevant fellows. So try to choose a good supervisor, because the wavelength between you and your supervisor decides a lot of things, because you will be in contact with them. I think not only it stops with your PhD, not only it stops with your fellowship, it's like a lifetime journey, because wherever you are, whatever projects you're doing, you can always come back to him and then you can ask about, if you cannot solve a problem by yourself, you can always go to your PhD professor. And the work of a supervisor is just in motivating you and also giving you a right problem based on your abilities. So before choosing a PhD guide, just speak with other people and get to know about his, not only just, if you go to a university, then if you just ask who is the good professor, they will say the best two professors, but need not be he is best for you, because the wavelength might not sync with him. Your wavelength might not sync with him. And they will be just big because they have bigger projects than other professors. It does not mean he's the only best professor and stuff like that. So try to choose a good professor, which will be really helpful. And I see people so curious about science. If you say the word scientist, then they'll be so fascinated. Then they say, "Oh, I am interested in knowing things." But I must say that curiosity is just not enough. Of course, you need to have curiosity to know many things. And I think being curious is not only advantageous for science field. I think it is for any other field. But here you should understand that being in research position, suppose like you study some book and then you'll be interested in some project, but your project guide might not be so interested in it. So even there you will not feel that, okay, then why am I doing this project? And if once you start doing the projects, you have to undergo 1,000 experiments to get one successful result. Even if you see Newton's career, like he published his theory 22 years after he did this. So it's not like a one-day job, and it will make you more frustrated. So it's not just, okay, I am curious, so I will become a scientist. You cannot directly go into that. You should understand that being so patient is also something which you need to develop you over it. Of course, like once you enter into PhD, automatically you will develop that habit. But I see some people without knowing this entering into the career and they feel super bored and they waste their time. So just understand this thing also. And everywhere you go to any career guidance program, and if you say that you want to become a scientist, then they say this word: it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Because suppose like a PhD career spans over 4 to 5 years. Everybody who comes into the PhD program, everybody wants to get a Nobel Prize. That's the curiosity people will have in their first year. But at the end of the 5th year, you can see people having not even one result, not even one single good result to even publish their thesis, not even one good result to publish the paper. Because in their first year itself, they work like anything, and then they think, okay, I am so exhausted now and I cannot do anything more. It's not like this. Because in a sprint, suppose like if you set 100 meter as the as the deadline, you just need to reach the 100 meters. But in marathon, it's not like that. There is 5 kilometer marathon, 10 kilometer marathon, 27, 40. So you can just extend your limits. Even throughout your life, you can keep extending your limits. So we should understand that once you enter into this career, it's not a one-day thing or something you just see in a movie like how fastly we achieve. It's not like that. It's like it will become like a lifestyle. So just do not have this in mind and then enter into this career. That's one thing I want to say, everyone. And I have seen many people who have chosen this. After listening to this, I know that people will be more interested and also they can get disinterested. But people who are interested, they enter into it. But then the problem comes when they start comparing with the peer group people who are into other careers. For example, like after bachelor's, I chose PhD, and there are people who went into software. There are people who went into UPSC preparations in some other field in management. So you see that after 2 years, you might be getting lower salary or lower stipend than others. And also you might see that you are working much higher time than others. Then you think, okay, maybe I chose a wrong career and this is not good. So I think during the life of a PhD, this comes, but we should know that this is a temporary one. And of course, all of us know that comparing with others will just give us inferiority complex. So once you are entering there, and if you get this feel, it's okay because everybody get this, but just try to make a way of overcoming it, because all these things are just temporary. It's not going to be your lifetime or anything. So this kind of things we should just know prior before entering into a research position, I must say. So, and like business, when you enter into PhD, people say you can work anytime you want. But having a personal time and having a professional time is not only for other professions, it is also for research profession. Because then, as I said, once you are entering into research, it's like you are entering your life in that. It does not stop like with the 4 years or the 5 years you are doing PhD. Then your life is going to be like that. So you need to really have a schedule, and you need to make research as a lifestyle more than thinking, okay, after 5 years I will do, after 6 years I will do anything. It's not going to be like that, because once you enter into research, it's how your life is going to be. So getting a life is important, and I see many of the PhD students missing this thing, which is caring for many things. Many people I have seen actually. So this is one thing I want to say. And if you want to enter into research career, please develop this skill of data analysis. So mostly the data is going to be only in two forms. Mostly it will be in graph or in image. And making the graphs, we just know only from school. We just use a graph sheet and then we will plot it and then we will get a graph. But once you enter into research, you will be getting lots and lots of data. So, and you need to know lots of suppose like by just seeing this curve, you should be able to know, okay, this is something in terms of exponential. Suppose if it is a straight line, this is going to be in a linear format. So try to develop this skill. This you can develop like by seeing by first working with softwares like MATLAB or Python or something, so that once you start plotting it and then seeing how the curve is fitting, then automatically you will get this feel. And also doing image analysis. For example, like here we have some circle here, we have kind of ellipse here. It's very easy for our eye to identify this, but if you ask a software to identify it, then it will be difficult. So try to learn at least some simple image analysis things which will be useful for you over the course, because I have seen people who come after who start learning after they get the data. So it is very difficult, because once you get the data, you need to keep processing it so that your research will move fast. So these two things, whether you like it or not, this is going to be there in your research field. Whether you choose experiment side, whether you choose theory side, everywhere these two things are going to be there. So try to develop this software skill for data analysis, which will be really useful. I think it won't be just useful for research. It will be useful for many other careers also, I think. So this is one good habit to develop before entering into research career. And during lockdown, we have plenty of time, and if possible, you can start developing even now. And people ask about the higher studies and job opportunities. As I said, now in physics department, in applied physics, chemistry, applied physics, biotechnology, electronics, mechanical, material science, energy, nanoscience, everywhere there is always a position open for people who have, there will be always a job position in the name of nanoscience. So you can be from any department, and if you see a project like this, you can apply it, because mostly nowadays the research is going as an interdisciplinary. So you don't need to think, okay, I am from this background, whether I can enter into nanoscience. Or if you are even from material science, if you are from physics, then you have a lot of direct opportunities also, because not only the physics department wants physics people, they also want people from other departments also, because now the research is completely independent, interdisciplinary now. So you get opportunities throughout this, and I think you might have an idea of what are the good universities, what are the research labs, and you just need not just look at US and Germany now. Nowadays, uh, I think in India itself, there are a lot of things. In Israel, there are a lot of things. In Sweden, Netherlands, Canada, nowadays, they have a lot of things. South Korea is so good. So try to look at Japan National Institute of Material Science. The NIMS is so good for material science. So try to look at different places and just look at the projects you are going to work on more than the name of the university or something. Because nowadays people see the expertise more than the brand name or something. So nanoscience, higher studies, and job opportunities is everywhere, from what, irrespective of whatever discipline you are from. So with this, I conclude my talk. I thank all the participants and also the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And if you have questions, you can ask me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hema, for a wonderful talk. We have some questions coming on the chat.
Sure.
Varun seems to be interested to know that he's actually just completed schooling and wants to know what's the scope for mechatronics and CSE group.
Okay.
I think the question on CSE, I'm assuming
Computer science.
Yeah, that's probably as a talk on. Please choose what you would like to answer.
Yeah. So, okay. Mechatronics and CSE is computer science, I think.
I think so.
I think so. So I would suggest, if you are just finishing your schooling and then starting your bachelor's, you better go to mechanical field or electronics field or computer science field, instead of choosing mechatronics or anything. You can do a field like mechatronics in your master's, but if you choose the bachelor's, depending on whatever you like, because I think mechanical also has its own advantages, electronics has its own advantages, computer science also is good. So you can choose either of these three based on your interest. And mechatronics you can do in your masters, because mechatronics has a lot of opportunities now, but in a master's level or in a PhD level more than in a bachelor level actually. So
KG has a question: how to collaborate with people effectively in research?
Okay, so that's something I wanted to say, then I did not have time to speak about it. How to collaborate with people, because nowadays none of the, suppose like I'm an experimentalist, and if I just submit my work only with the experimental results, then the community does not accept, because then they want a model to verify whatever I'm predicting is correct or not. And similarly, the same applies for people who are in theory, because if they propose a theory, then they want the things to be to be performed experimentally to see, okay, whatever we have done is good. So one strategy which my professor, I see my professor collaborating with all over the world. So one thing is, during conferences, he goes and discusses our results with other professors and even the company people. And also when we are presenting in the conferences, we say that we need these kind of things. And if anybody in the group is, in the audience is interested, please write a mail to us or something. So mostly during the conferences, and it develops by itself, right? Suppose like I go with my professor, so I see whoever he is speaking with. So then I show my results to them. So I think mostly during the conferences and direct contact. And the thing is like, before collaboration, we should have in mind, I mean, I should be so good at something. So if I speak with another professor, then I can directly tell him, can you give a material to me so that I can do a microscopy for you? Because we are good at microscopy, then we will tell them, can you give us the material? So we will give the microscopy. Then in another case, we will give them something and they will do something for us. So the key thing is we should be good at something. Then it will be easy for the simple give and take policy. That's how I see the collaborations happening around research. I think that's how it will be with anyone actually.
Thank you, Hema. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What is this is a little outside the talk, but what comes after the postdoc? Are you in that time yet, or what do you know? What's in store after the postdoc for you?
Okay, so
industry.
Okay, so after my during my PhD, I was so worried about what I will do, where I will go. I was so worried. But I think I attained the saint mode once I finished my PhD. Now I'm like, okay, I know these many things. I have the skills. So whatever comes, I think I can do good for whatever job I will get. So,
Absolutely.
okay, I prefer to be in academics, but of course, nothing is in my hand. Then, even then I think, okay, suppose if I go to IITs, then I will do projects at that level. If I don't get anywhere, and if I go to a simple college, then I know projects using bachelor's also I can design some good projects and then give. So now I'm just, I'm not much thinking about what will be my career or something, because I think I'm just going in that flow. Else it gives me unnecessary tension, and before even deciding a project, then I'll think, oh, if I do this project and if I get this result, whether will I get this job? And so that kind of calculation comes, and I think it's unnecessary for a person to be in a research. Then I cannot choose a good project, I think. So
there is no question that whatever comes your way, you'll hit it out of the park. All the best.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you. So
I think we have covered all the questions. I appreciate we all in Sagana appreciate your time, and
thank you.
We will attendees. Thank you for making it. We will post the slides as well as the video online in the Ask a CGN website. Thank you so much, Hema. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Shanta, would you like to add something?
No, this was just fantastic. And, you know, the key takeaways started from the first slide for me. Read. And then the next one was connecting the dots, right? That is so important. So thank you so much, Hema. This was just so enlightening. And for me, being in the West Coast of the United States, just like Karthik, getting up and listening to your talk was so inspirational. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
you.
I second that. Thank you. Thank you, Hema.
With that, we will conclude, Karthik?
Yes, I think so. We will conclude. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Hema.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting. See you.